Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you might be. I am Nicole BC, and you know everything. Well, Jaime, I am so excited to have you here today for so many different reasons. And we were just joking in the sort of preamble to actually hitting the record button, everybody, that you might want to settle in, pour yourself a bevy, because once the two of us get chatting, firstly, amazing things happen, but we can get going. And I am really excited to talk to Jaime. I've been witnessing her journey and her transformation for a few years now. Has it been like at least 4 years, maybe longer?
Oh no,
than
I think
that?
it's been longer than that. No, yeah, I think it's been like closer to like maybe 7.
Holy shit.
It's been a long time. Yeah. It's been a while.
Jaime has found herself in a position of being a leadership and purpose alchemist. And it was funny, for a minute there, I was calling myself a business alchemist. I think alchemy is absolutely our magic. Mm-hmm. She helps epic and driven humans step into their greatest power and purpose by finding flow, defining success in their terms, and becoming self-authored in their life. And I met you in your business phase, where you have built 4 successful businesses, navigated multi-millions in revenue and clients and products and services and impact-driven businesses. And it's all been wild to watch. But everything changed when at 35, you became a first-time mom. So it's really challenging to navigate how to be an entrepreneur, a business owner, a visionary, and also lead your business. Define what success means with these new paradigms and structures within your own life. So Jaime has been exploring how to unlock your deeply intuitive gifts that all humans possess to intentionally co-create a life that you can envision. So as a coach and mentor, Jaime leads with intuitive clarity and strategic business sense that rapidly transforms her clients' lives. She's powerfully combined her nearly 20 years of personal growth work and education with over 17 years in building businesses that serve through offers like one-to-one coaching, masterminds, and the most magical, most tempting, tantalizing retreats I think someone can attend. It is #goals for me to finally get there. You can find Jaime at inspiredfocus.co, but you're going to get an absolute earful today and I think this was a fun one for me. I continually go back to as well. Jaime and I met on the internet and are actual living proof that social media can do good. And you can actually find really powerful, really impactful relationships on social media, not even doing it right. Like just actually by being yourself and showing up in a way that is exploratory, I think, and curious. I mean, I know like we had a couple things in common just in terms of we were both Colorado based at the time. We've both gone wackadoodle nomad since then. But I do reflect fondly on the fact that like I actually have met some of my most trusted and inspired peers on social media. So I just thought that was like kind of an interesting place to start. Anything to share before I start interrogating you, Jaime?
I mean, I feel like we're going to go many magical directions. I don't even need to, we can just go, let's see what happens. But I think this is a great place to start. And I totally agree. I actually feel like in today's world, I have some of my best friends from those I've met on the internet. And sometimes when I feel my loneliness in person, I remember I have peers that are deeply soul resonant, even if they're not in my physical location that I met online.
I told people a little bit about your background, but for our listeners, wherever you feel called to go, how did this conversation come to be, or how did you get to where you are right now?
Oh, goodness. Where do I start with that? Well, let's see. I am a Taurus sun and a Pisces moon and a Gemini rising. So that, for those astrology nerds out there, will give you everything you need to know. No, really, I've lived many lives in 38 years. Like, I haven't been afraid to quit and start over and take the leap of faith, which has led me to where I am today, because I get to live a life that is pretty freaking rad, like really amazing. But it wasn't an easy journey to get there, as you have talked about in various different ways. And, I came from honestly a really privileged life. Like I experienced ups and downs in a lot of different ways. I could tell the story of my parents going bankrupt and like moving into our car and moving from California to Colorado and like not knowing where we were going to be when I was 8 years old. And I have told that story. My dad became a millionaire by the time I was 15. So we went from like car to money that my family didn't know how to handle, which was really uncomfortable. And my dad being a really brilliant businessman who's also an alcoholic. Like there's thread lines of all of these things through everything that happens there that led me to all the different places I've been, to wanting to be a photographer in college and not doing it because my dad told me that you wouldn't be successful if you did anything but business. And as it turns out, I've learned recently that my astrology chart, my natal chart, says that I'm not only a magical creature, but I also am really good at business. And that's been interesting to learn, because I, as a human, have this like deeply spiritual side and this desire to be like in purpose-driven work. And I also really love talking to people about their marketing strategy. And it's this push and pull experience that I've had through the through lines of work, like where I've been deeply called to go live in third world countries and explore what is happening at the depths of human experience. And then I like come back and I want to go build a business doing event marketing, and allowing myself to be in the flow of that, and the pain and the joy that comes with that is what I've come to learn is my medicine, is being able to hold that safe container for people to explore that on their own, because it hasn't been safe to do that out in the world, especially those of us who are really high achievers.
So Jaime, I'm not going to let you off the hook that easy. I have gotten to witness some of these ups and downs. And I think what is actually really useful for our listeners, because you and I have something in common. When things are up, we're like, okay, it's time to make this interesting. And so you talked a little bit about this deeply spiritual path that you've been on, but it didn't start there, and it hasn't always been like that. And you were doing some pretty impressive stuff in terms of digital marketing, being an entrepreneur, establishing your own businesses. And then this deeply spiritual path kind of demanded your attention. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering if you can share one or two stories with us about the first time you were like, oh crap, this isn't doing it for me, even though like 7 figures should probably be doing it for me. And then when you really were like, I am not playing anymore. Like I'm not going to be in both of these worlds at the same time. I'm going to commit to myself and my practice and to my growth, even if that means some scary shit might happen in terms of business and finances.
Yeah. Well, in this iteration of life, that really started when I had my first son. So, I built my agency, and all things out on paper looked like everything that I'd ever dreamed of. I used to keep, and it's a practice I want to get back to, but I used to keep a vision board book. So not like make vision boards every year, but a book where I could turn back and look at the previous years and the things that I'd put out there. And I remember being about 3.5 years into my agency, which took off from the get-go. And I'd done a lot of deep work prior to starting the agency, because I had one of those epic fails of a business starting experience. And I didn't want to repeat those patterns. So before I even stepped foot into building that, I did a lot of work around my belief systems that I knew somewhere in me were going to keep me from the dreams, the goals, the next level that I imagined myself capable of doing. So it was about 3.5 years in, and I was looking at this vision board book, and I was looking at the first year that I had started the business, and I saw all of these things I had put down, like 6-figure business and being able to live wherever I want and all of these things. Well, most of those things we actually accomplished within the first 6 months. Like, and I hadn't done another vision board since, right? I just kept building and doing the thing and impacting lives in the way I was impacting it, because that was ultimately, that and freedom were my 2 goals at the core, like the 2 things I was driving for in all intents and purposes, and they still are. Those are still 2 pretty core foundational themes for me. And I was shocked at the fact that I had so far outweighed what I had thought was these big, heavy dreams. And I was fucking miserable. Like, so miserable. And the first step was to get myself to the freedom, because what I actually didn't have was freedom. And that was really clear. Like, that was super, super clear that I didn't have freedom. So I did a lot of work, operations and systems and all of these things. I spent so much money creating operations and systems in my business to create freedom. And yeah, I was still like ending up in day-to-day hell all the time. And I hired an operations consultant, and he did this deep dive. And he came back after 3 weeks and he was like, all right, I know what the problem is. And he says, it's you. I was like, oh, all right, let's do this. And so,
you're like, wait, I'm sorry, how much did I pay for that?
Yeah. No. You're supposed to go in and find the problem inside the business.
Yeah. It's their fault. Yeah.
And I was at a point where, like, it resonated immediately. I knew he was right. And I was about 6 months into postpartum with my first kid, with my first son. And I was ready to burn the entire thing down. I was just like so done with everything, that I was willing to hear and do anything to get myself out of this cycle and try and figure out what had happened, because I had accomplished the dream and I really was left disappointed. Now, mind you, what I know now is that also in postpartum, we go through a death and rebirth process. No one tells you this before you birth a child, that a part of you dies, like dies. That part of you is going to die. And no one tells you this. So at the same time that I'm realizing I've accomplished all my dreams and I don't know like why I'm so miserable, I also have a part of my identity that is dying and I am resisting allowing it to happen. And it created this tornado of an experience that I attempted to understand with some really sketchy situations with psychedelics. So that goes into a whole other realm, because I'm like grasping at straws to figure out what the heck I can do to actually enjoy this really freaking beautiful life that I've created. And this amazing husband that I have, and this beautiful child, and this business where after I was working with my consultant, Ben, for a little while, I got to a point where I was having mimosas on a Wednesday with my husband, and I'm still miserable. Like, what is happening? And I was just done. And so it took a lot of therapy, a lot of coaching, a lot of tearing down my own ego and facing a lot of my own really deep shadows that I had avoided in all of the surface level personal growth work I had done up until that point, because it was just no longer going to work. I knew there was a level of joy I wasn't accessing. And what I realized, I was never going to access that if I wasn't willing to go to the depths of the pain. I had to expand my capacity to feel the depths of all of my life, all of the things that had brought some of the worst pains that I had ever imagined a human could go through, but shamed myself because I'm a pretty white woman, that I shouldn't feel bad about that and I wouldn't go there. And I went there and I did it. And I sat with the really hard stuff and I allowed it to change me, and I allowed the versions of myself to come back, and I allowed the versions of myself so that I wouldn't let actually die and become compost for the person that I'm supposed to become. And you know what? Like, I'm going to have to do that again and again for the rest of my life. And I've come to accept that.
Thank you for letting me go there.
It's my favorite thing in the world now. So
yeah, well, and it's like, I can't tell you how often, and I find myself doing this too. And it's like, I've worked really hard. I'm, doing the work, but it's like, I'm making the hard calls. I don't think of it in terms of sacrifice. I think of it in terms of priorities, but like, I'm willing to prioritize the thing that feels scary and impossible and like unimaginably difficult. And like, I'm sorry, where's the trophy? Like, I'm still waiting for the applause universe. Like, I was laughing because I have this new property and it is like torrential downpour raining. And yet my well is like potentially running dry. And I was like, you got jokes up there, yo. Like, how is this even possible? But these are the things that I think like we take on in terms of trying to be all of the things. And what I kind of wanted to ask you is, with 2020 hindsight now, how did you navigate, juggle, crawl to the finish line and recognizing like, I'm trying to be a wife and a mother and a woman and a business owner and a leader and a change maker, and also like holding space for these people who are in their own process of healing and growth?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't think that the finish line has been accomplished yet. And I'm pretty sure that I will never see it. And I have so many moments. I mean, I am always in a growth process. I will say my greatest teacher is my relationship with my husband, because he is my mirror and reflection. I, to this day, don't feel worthy of him. I don't know if I will ever feel worthy of him. And in a way that's like super beautiful, because it gives me the container to be looking at, because he doesn't hold shame. He doesn't hold shame back at me. He holds me as me. So my family continues to be my greatest teacher and my greatest reflection of where my growth is. And as long as I'm looking at that from a place of curiosity, and this is the thing I think with all of this work and all work in every area, right? Life and business, it's actually the same thing. We need to be looking at it. I need to be looking at it daily from a place of deep curiosity of what that is, what is happening, of contemplation, instead of shame. Because it's when we go into the shame spiral that then we start hiding the stuff that then keeps us from it, that then like pulls us back down. And so if I can be in deep curiosity and notice the moments of shame, because we're human and it's going to happen, and be in that and use the work myself. Like, I can never be above it. I can never be above the work. I can never be above going deep into myself. I can never be above working with someone to call me out on my shit. Then I can show up for everyone else. And I don't always show up for everyone else. Right now, I'm in a deep place of learning with conscious parenting and my 3.5-year-old, who triggers the fuck out of me every single day.
I was like, oh shit, you had me at 3.
I mean, they're terrorists. There's a reason why they call it 3 natures, but they're also not, right? It feels like he's a terrorist because he's terrorizing all of my 3-year-old trauma and like all of my triggers. And, I very admittedly in the last 3 months have gotten to a place I don't love. And I'm having to really reel myself back and recognize, oh, wait, there is a part of me that is really scared of all of this. That is the scared 3-year-old that is responding to him. And this is my chance for me to grow. And he's my reflection of that. And I on my deepest level, all I want in the world is to protect his magic and innocence at this age. And yet, because of like my deep-seated fears of repeating processes that took away my magic and innocence at this age, I'm repeating the same shit that did that. And that's what we all do. And that's what we all do in every area of our life, right? Like our business is a constant reflection of what is broken. I want to use the word broken because I don't think anyone's broken, but what is in need of looking at and repair in our spiritual alignment. Like when your systems are broken in your business, there is something in that is going to tell you where you're spiritually, psychologically misaligned, and that you can actually look at to explore, deepen, integrate, heal, and grow into the next version of yourself. So our systems are a reflection, our children are a reflection, our husbands are a reflection, our partners are a reflection, our best friends, our relationships with the women in our life, all of it. If we can look at it from curiosity instead of shame, we can start to see the areas that are our most capacity for growth.
I want to circle back to that because I know you and I have a lot of conversations about how do you create an impactful business in a world that's not that interested in impact. So we're going to circle back around to that. And I know that this is where you support people and work with people. So I don't want you to give it all away. Not that it's even about that, but I am really curious, like, it's kind of the first step for a lot of us is just going like, I'm afraid. And what's your take on how to like accept and recognize the fear, yet create the impact, the change, just simply create alongside or in awareness that, yeah, like this is scaring the shit of me, but that's not going to stop me.
Well, there's different pathways here. So there's the pathway of
there is no one right way. And I think that's another paradigm that we're breaking free of. So thank you for calling that out as well.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, if you're talking to anybody that you're going to be hiring to help you and they say that their way is the only way, or that there's like a specific thing that's going to help you, run because it's bullshit. It's just not true. And, we could go on I could go on a very long tangent on that, but we're not going to go down that way because that wasn't the question.
That's like, I might get some coaching on that.
So from my perspective, there's a couple different things in that question. So there's the part where we're afraid of something and we're either not stepping out or it's scary to go there. And on that side of things, that is where we talk about capacity. And that's where there's a few things out in the world that I think are absolute bullshit, especially in the coaching world, where we talk about, jumping off the deep end or doubling your prices or whatever the things are. And we're totally ignoring the effects that has on your body and your nervous system. And what really makes impactful change in your life is when we're willing to expand our capacity just enough that it pushes us out, right? So finding what that is for you. Some people, they need that thing. Like they need to be cliff diving. And so for them, their capacity pushing out in order to expand themselves looks more like 50%. But some people, it's like 10%. And so the easiest way to think about this is raising your prices, right? So yeah, there's gurus out there that say like, you're not charging a job, double your prices, whatever. But if your nervous system doesn't align with that, if your body and your psyche and your energy doesn't align with that, you're going to get on the call where you've been saying $1,000 a month. And then you're going to come on and you're going to say $2,000 a month. And you're going to expect the person to say no, and they're going to say no. And that's going to be how it goes because you're not aligned with that number. And it's pushing you so far outside your comfort zone that it's not going to work. And so in this case, you might be someone who's a cliff diver. And what you need to do is you need to push yourself to 1,500. Get the words out of your mouth, but say it confidently. Maybe you're somebody who, like, getting on a bike is like a little bit overwhelming for you. And so you need to push it 10%. And your first number is 1,100 or 1,150. And you keep pushing the 10% capacity out to get to that place where the balloon is like fully fulfilled all the way. And you can stay there comfortably until you need the next challenge. And that's how we grow without shutting ourselves down completely and being able to push into the place of impact where we're actually making a difference and not keeping ourselves really, really small. That's one of the biggest keys that people don't think about, because we always want to either push ourselves or we keep ourselves too small. But we can actually do it in this really beautiful, aligned way that feels good. And that analogy is pricing, but honestly, you can use it in every single area. You learned a new skill set and you're afraid to go use it. What is one way you can push your capacity 10, 15, 20%? Yeah, you're going to be uncomfortable. But like, where can you be uncomfortable and grow at the same time without shutting yourself down completely? So that's one pathway. I have another one, but let's
so go down cool and such gold. And I mean, what I'm hearing you say is you create the capacity to be with that fear and still take one step forward. And that's going to look different for everybody.
Everyone.
What are some of the things that you've put in place in just your own work and day-to-day life to allow you to do that?
Well, it's kind of just a rule of thumb I have. So in any instance, I'm always looking at, do I feel a call to grow? Because that's one other piece too, right? We don't always have to be doing this. So
too true.
The problem becomes when you feel that call to grow, we can get in that place of comfort and stagnancy where we don't do anything. And sometimes that's okay. Again, curiosity over shame, right? Like there's things still happening in that time frame that maybe is rest that you need. Okay. And we all have it. We all have the time where we start to feel that itch, that like antsiness. We're like, oh, it's too tight. Like the balloon's too tight. The jacket's too tight. I need to stretch out a little bit. The world tells us in order to be valuable, we have to like jump to the next level to show that we're valuable. But that's a bunch of patriarchal bullshit. And we need to actually explore what is going to make us do that expansion, do that capacity expansion. So it's being in touch with yourself, so I guess to answer the question more is we need to be doing the practices on a daily basis if we can. Look, I'm a mom of 2 with a 1-year-old. I do not do this daily. But whenever I can, pulling in the practices that get you in touch with your body, with your somatics, with your psyche and your intuition. Because that's going to tell you, right? That's going to be the stuff that tells you, all right, it's time to expand. That's going to be the stuff that tells you, no, it's time to rest. That's going to be the thing that actually says, no, actually, we need to go into a phase of contraction right now. But you can only do that when you're in touch. So clearing that piece of it, things like intentional movement. I mean, one of my favorite practices is I have a list on my Spotify that is my BSMT. This comes from one of my mentors, Reverend Brianna Lynn. She calls it, it's breath, sound, movement, touch, but you could also say moving my BS mountain. And it's music that really gets into my core, right? So sometimes it might be like Modest Yahoo one day, or like sometimes it's medicine music, like ayahuasca medicine music. Sometimes it's Lizzo. Whatever it is that really gets me into the energy of being with my body and just moving and moving in whatever capacity my body needs to move, breathing in whatever capacity my body needs to breathe, touching my body in whatever way I need to touch my body to move the energy, and making sounds. And you sound and look weird as fuck, but who cares, right? Because this moves all the stuff out. So then you can actually kind of have that clear, I mean, it sounds woo-woo, but like the clear channel of intuition of what's actually happening. That's the thing. That's the practice. There's nothing else. Like, yeah, you could put stuff on your calendar. There could be whatever, but it's knowing, am I in a space of contraction, a space of rest? Am I in a space of expansion? And knowing what that level is, right? So knowing if you're a 10% uncomfort level, if you're a 15, if you're a 50, but you can't know any of those things if you're not able to get in touch with your intuitive sense, your body, your psyche.
I'm loving all of this so much. I'm like letting it, I don't know if you can tell, it's like washing over me. And so it's just so, I don't know, we haven't gotten to connect in a minute, and it's always just so amazing connecting with you. So thank you. It's like 1,000 questions. Okay. Your life is obviously hectic AF. I can hear it being hectic in the background.
Sorry for the kiddos in the background. And I know you come
from, oh no, that's so real. Like I want people, that's the whole point of this interview series is, and I call it the relatables, because every person listening can relate to you. No one can relate to the person who's like perfectly coiffed, sitting behind some like glass desk with like the ocean crashing behind them. And like, they're like, I did 15 minutes of meditation today and I made $15 million. It's like, cool. I don't even want that. So anyhow, I'll get off my soapbox. And I know you came from a pretty like type A, data oriented, like you were business with a capital B. And so how do you approach your days again as a leader and a business builder and a service provider, knowing that like you can do your very fucking best. You have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. Like, how do you navigate? Just like, do we even think of it in terms of a Monday to Friday?
Well, I do only because my older 3.5-year-old is in school. So I have like in preschool. So I have like a very set schedule where he's gone. So in that way, I do look at it in that capacity. I think there's like a grander piece here, which is moving from a very, very type A business oriented personality, high achieving. My entire identity was around being a successful businesswoman, to this space that I'm in now, which I don't really even have a way to label, partly because I've done a lot of work to undo those labels, but also because I'm in a constant state of transition that I'm exploring all the time. And what happened and what existed for me was layers and layers and layers of shame for this deeply creative, intuitive being that I had underneath that isn't, or I didn't believe was valued in the world we live in today. And that part of me, which is a huge part of me, constantly struggled to break out of the experience of being put in a box and schedules and having to do things a certain way, that the constraints of this identity of being a really successful businesswoman put on me. And what I came to find from the story that earlier of kind of what happened in my life was that I have this genius in business strategy, but this genius in business strategy actually comes from the ability to see this bigger problem and then see the whole solution that needs to happen for it. And I can do that in business and I can do that in your life, right? So I can sit and talk to you and hear the threads and the cords of where that's all fitting together and everything. I had made it so important that people knew I was really, really good and successful that I didn't allow any of these other parts to actually drive the ship. And I was miserable because of it. So now I'm in a place where I let the part that wants to come up be the part that drives the ship. And so some days and some weeks, that's me being super into figuring out what the framework of my book is going to be. Sometimes it's me like, I'm going to go swim in the ocean today. Now, I've created a life that allows me the freedom to do this. So I am in the privileged place to be able to do that. And not everyone is. And I respect that, and also will tell you, you can get there if you make the choice to do it. So, you know, I wasn't always there either, but I came to learn what my priorities in life were. And I made sure that every decision I made went to moving that needle forward over anything else so that I could make the choice. And I could be in a place where the part that wants to take center stage today gets to take center stage today. While still honoring my commitments, a la 4 agreements or anything else. And really looking at my life in that capacity, it goes to, you know, the cliche stuff of what it is not a fuck yes is a no, but it's true. And and the different parts of me have different fuck yeses. And they do. And I honor that, right? Like I have days where I love jamming on your marketing strategy and figuring out what's going to be the next thing. I don't sell that as my main thing because it's not something I want to do every day. Now, could I get on almost every day with somebody and like deep dive into their psyche and excavate their beliefs and like change them over and then get them to like feel like a new human? I could do that every day because that lights me up right now today. Will it in 5 years? I have no idea. And I don't care because of that person then will be making different choices.
How did you give yourself permission to be in this constant state of transition?
Well, that's a really interesting question. All the things we've talked about, like being willing to be really scared and in pain sometimes. Dealing with my perfectionism and my type A-ness that still comes out, you know, recognizing the shame. I mean, the reality is we're actually, as humans, always in transition. We're always in transition. And it's really systemic and societal that has put us into the box. And that exists, and it's going to exist no matter how much deep work we do, because we've been dealing with it for 4,000 years, and we have epigenetic lines and whatever else you want to have that are like deeply inside us that are going to come up forever. And recognizing that and accepting what is, that's how you can be able to be in transition. It just actually isn't reality that we're not.
Okay, so this is where I'm going to circle back then to the comment you made about being broken. And on the one hand, not believing that anyone is broken. But on the other hand, and I know this about both of us, but because of our conversations in the past, like the system is broken, the patriarchy is broken, the systemic racism is broken. Like there's so many things that actually are broken. And I think it kind of comes... these external systems and constructs, it's inarguable. I mean, we just look around, right? Things are literally blowing up. So how do you build a business? I refer to it as like new world business building and 21st century CEOs. And I have my own theories on this, but I'm really curious how you approach creating something you know is going to be constantly in transition. You know, people are going to be approaching it in this sense of commitment and follow through and static being rather than dynamic. Like, because I think one of the most difficult things about anyone going, I am a being in a state of constant death and rebirth. But it's like, but what will other people think? Or the flip side is you get these people who are just like burning it the fuck down without any consideration as to how their constant transitioning is potentially damaging. And not to say that they shouldn't do that anymore, but like, it feels like these are both ends of the paradox that we're the conundrum that we're being also asked to solve as like these new world business builders. And that's, you've given yourself permission beautifully. And I think it's just simply being like honest and real and humble. And
constant
yet
student
in
of
business,
life.
yeah. And just approaching it with the beginner's mindset every damn day, every conversation. But business, this is one of the reasons I love being a business coach, is I find that these things become a lot less approachable. Like in our personal lives, it's one thing, but you know, when you sign a contract with somebody, like they think that's going to be what's happening in a year. And like, I'm pretty sure you and I are both like, I mean, this is a fun idea right now. So how do you approach business building and agreements and partnerships and even just like the creative process, recognizing like I could be a completely different person in 5 minutes?
Yeah. I mean, I think, man, this is a tough one.
I know. I love the good questions. I'm like, I'm going to ask 6 simple questions and then I just go totally off the cuff.
That's how I do it on my podcast too. It's all good. And I love it. I love to do conversations. Yes, man, it's interesting because I believe, as I've already kind of said, that businesses and your family are 2 of the greatest vehicles for your growth and ability to navigate this wild thing that we call life. And there's a lot of different factors. So I'll go at this from the perspective of my business currently. At this moment, I know the work I do is lighting me up every day. And I am always exploring what that looks like and allowing the path to kind of unfold in front of me. What I don't have is a fear that it isn't going to continue in a similar enough vein that the growth that I have coming towards me isn't going to keep me on a path that makes total sense and is connected to now. Like it's all a golden thread, right? Like everything we're doing has a golden thread that goes through all of it. The clients that come into my life, first of all, they don't sign on with me unless they're somewhat open to the fact that they're going to go through some kind of death and rebirth process just by signing a contract with me. Even if they come to me originally because the systems in their business are keeping them on fire in the day-to-day, which is how a lot of people come to me because that is an area that is a zone of excellence for me. And I make it very clear from the get-go that my belief system tells me that if your systems and business are on fire, your spiritual and psyche life are on fire. And we have to deal with that alongside and in action with. So I know these things are all interconnected, and whatever happens is happening in the same golden thread that I'm using right now. And having that trust and faith of that happening is a huge part of this. Now, what I'll also tell you is my transition from running my very successful marketing agency to this, which was not selling the business, which most people think is what I did. I shut it down. I made the choice to close it. I had the opportunity.
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. I had the opportunity to sell it.
That was wild. That was fucking wild. You're like, oh, I need $1 million business anymore. I was like, okay. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I think from the outside too, to a lot of people, it looked quick. And it wasn't, of course, because and crazy. It was a year and a half in the making. I had built my current coaching business on the side. I had fully replaced my income and I was really lit up by it. I had also gotten myself completely out of the business. I had been working on an agreement with a couple of my employees for them to take it on in a basically work for equity deal. And in the end, it just wasn't a fit for them. And I looked at the situation. I had built it to sell in one aspect, But the other aspect was that all of the sales were dependent on me from my energy, my magnetism, my network. And though people didn't realize it anymore, the strategy inside the business was no longer really mine. It was my team. I had really offloaded that to them. But from the outside perspective, it was me. And it was going to take me about a year to build up the sales system that would allow me to sell the agency for the multiple that would have made it worth it for me. And I had spent a year and a half working myself out of business. And I'd spent 3 years really deep diving into myself to understand who I am at my core. And I didn't have the heart to do it. And so when the deal fell through to sell it to my employees, I allowed myself to be with that for a period of time. I didn't rush into anything. And I was doing a lot of these daily practices to be really in touch with myself. And it literally dropped in one day that it was time. It was just time. And it was the most grounded, settled experience that I've ever had. I just knew. There was no like rush. There was no jitteriness. There was nothing. It was just there. And if I trust and I'm in touch and I'm staying in this place within the transition of all of the crazy shit happening very quickly, and my life changes very fast. I mean, within the same time frame I made that decision, I hosted a retreat that changed my life and changed the 8 women that were there in such a massive way. And then I moved 7 months pregnant to Mexico. Like, my life changes really freaking fast and is always in transition. And yet the big decisions, the really big changes happen in a way that is so grounded because I'm so connected that I don't worry. I just don't worry about it. Let me clarify that. I'm human. So of course I worry.
Yeah.
But like in the grand scheme of things, if I'm in a place of like anxiety and worry and like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen, I'm not in touch. That's actually for me, not oh my God, everything's going to fall apart. That's a sign for me. Okay, hold on. I need to take a step back. I need to go wake up. And I live in Mexico now because I've made that choice, and walk down to the ocean and take a swim. I need to take an intentional shower. I need to do my BSMT practice. I need to do some things to get myself back into a place where I'm not so tunnel vision and I'm like zooming out and seeing the little amount of the bigger picture that I have access to right now. So that's how.
That was a beautiful, beautiful answer and example. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciated hearing that. I'm pretty sure everybody else will. And to kind of circle back around, how do you grapple with like building business in this world right now?
Yeah, that's hard. When October 7th happened and everything that has happened since, and I'm like already getting teary-eyed about it, I've struggled. Like I've really struggled to understand the place in the world that we have. And again, I keep going back to these like very basic practices, but those things are the things that help, because I actually posted on my Instagram like a poem that I wrote after I did a 10-minute breath work and a BSMT. And it was like about, I don't know why I have landed in this body on this place where I live at this time with the privilege that I've had in this life. I don't know why. And for a lot of my life, I've actually felt a lot of shame around that. And that shame does nothing to change the rest of the world. I don't know why I'm not a mom whose child got ripped away from me on October 7th. I don't know why I'm not a mom who is holding her children every night afraid that a bomb is going to hit her house. Like, I don't know why. I don't know why I'm not a Black mother who is afraid every single time her teenage son steps foot outside. Like, I don't know. But I have to I'm doing what I can with the privilege that I have to, for me, be the bridge for leaders to tap into what they can do to make an impact in the world so that hopefully they can go out and do something with their privilege that makes a more positive impact so that slowly we change everything.
Yep. What do you, and I mean, I think some of the next questions I have for you, you've kind of already answered, and to put it millennially, I want to double click on that. But what is your work?
I'm exploring that every day still, I believe at like the most esoteric soul purpose level, I believe I'm a bridge for business leaders. I think I have a very grounded but deeply spiritual presence that understands like the 3D experience of being a leader in business and the vision that is required and the work that needs to be done. I also have died 1,000 times in my life. Like I had this realization not that long ago. I'm in some deep training for plant medicine work, which in and of itself is its own big conversation because I'm very, very cognizant of appropriation and respect. I have deep, deep respect for the lineages in this work. So it's not something I sell. It's something I'm in deep teacher work with myself. But one of the things that I have come to in that work, in what I present for other people, in the deeper work I do that isn't like literally working with your teams and operations, which is a part of it, I am really skilled, I guess, at being able to sit with the death process and the rebirth process in myself and with other people in a way that allows people to actually surrender. And for me to surrender, I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 2.5. I don't have seizures anymore. They stopped around 14. The last one I had was actually 21. And as I've sat with some of the medicines in my own medicine and breath work in particular, they often take you through a death process. You're going through some kind of ego death. And what I've come to realize is that every time I had a grand mal seizure growing up, it's the same exact experience that I've had at the peak of plant medicine ceremonies or breath work or going through labor unmedicated. They are all the same experience. When I went through every single time I was about to have a grand mal seizure, I had to surrender and let go and just be in the fact that my whole body was shutting down and that I was going to come back and that I could bring my body back. And I've done this a million times. It's like I've been trained for it since I was very little. And so on a really deep, esoteric soul purpose place, I can be with that. I can be with the worst pain and the worst fear of death and hold people through that in a way that allows them to actually experience it. And what most people don't recognize is that when we are trying to be a leader in this kind of new world way, in the way that is much more innovative and also non-hierarchical, it requires us to experience the death of not just our identities that have been created in this life, but every single identity that our ancestors have held as well. And that's what our leaders have to do in order to step into this. There is no way around it. I believe that to my core. And so the space that I hold is one where I can sit with that, and then I can go sit in your board meeting and help you nail the thing that needs to happen in order to make the changes within your organization that will change it here now on this earthly plane and help people be the priority and not profits and money and all of the other things.
How do you navigate like the board meeting and the deeply spiritual process. And I think you and I this is one of the magics that we weave. Like a lot
Yeah.
of my clients, I wouldn't even qualify as woo. And I realize that's like a deeply disrespectful
Yeah.
term. Anywho,
Yeah.
I try not to take anything
Totally.
too seriously. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, how do you kind of walk in both worlds?
I mean, it's the life I've been given.
Yeah.
Like it really, that's what it comes down to, is that I have pitched in front of VCs myself. Like I have built the company. I have done the thing on that side of it. And I feel very comfortable. I've sat in meetings with the CEO of Lexus. Like I've sat across the dinner table from people that are extremely powerful, and none of that scares me. And maybe it's because of all this other stuff that none of that scares me. I don't know.
But spirituality hasn't been as forward facing in your experience. Like I feel
No.
like in the language that we speak and the medicines that you now get to actively carry around with you. So like, is it just code changing, or, I mean, how did you even allow it to become such a prevalent part and really pivot to like, this is now my work rather than like your digital marketing strategy?
Good question. I mean, I think I allowed it to change me a little bit, maybe.
Right.
I allowed my own soul to kind of take over and take the reins versus what society was telling me was okay. I mean, I resisted this for a really long time. Like, I had so much judgment of the woo, if you will, and all of the pieces of that. And I've had a lot of experiences that have forced me to face that. So, in that respect, it's interesting. I've come to a place where the clients I work with and I want to work with have this deeper sense that there's something spiritual. Maybe they call it that, maybe not, but it's this deeper call that they're like, I don't understand what it is that you do, but like, I think we need to do it. And it's that sense of trust in that way. And the thing is I don't want to work with the people who are like living on another earthly plane, even though they're here. Those are not my people. I want the ones who are making change right here on the ground now. And they need like a psyche spiritual army to help them make it happen. Because that's the world we're living in now.
I mean, it feels like quite literally the process of creation. Do you consider yourself a creative or an artist?
Oh, this is so good, because let me just tell you that I did not, because of the whole type A business identity. I am a badass businesswoman and I couldn't identify with being a creative, I thought. And I've come to realize I am at my core a deeply creative being. That is, and when I really think about it, I mean, I built multiple businesses. You have to be so creative to do that.
Yep.
But it was just accepted that looks like this and creatives look like this. Now, what's really funny, I guess, and ironic is that when I was in high school, I went to a public high school that was brand new, and they had an art wing, which I don't know if that even is a thing anymore, but they had an entire art wing. It had a dark room and pottery throwing studio and like a drawing studio. I lived in that wing in high school. Like that's where I was every day. And yet somehow this story took hold in me that I wasn't a creative person. I mean, I know how that story took hold, and that's not stuff we need to get into, but that, I had really built around that. Now I've really embraced it, which all the things we've talked about, those are all creative, deeply creative parts of our being. I believe all human beings are deeply creative, and we've kind of boxed ourselves and beat ourselves out of it. And when we get in touch with that, that also encapsulates all of the pain and all of the joy. And the more that we expand our capacity to feel the pain and the joy, the more we expand our capacity to be in our creative realm and be the artists of our life. and allow things to become a muse and not have to monetize them. So
that last line, especially, I mean, I also struggled with the concept of creativity. I worked with artists. I supported artists. I actually did connect artists to monetization, assuming that they wanted to turn their art into a business upon which their livelihood depended on. That's a completely different construct. Mm-hmm. But I think where I started to I had always shit all over spirituality. I was raised by anti-theists, and for powerful reasons. I think we can see what organized religion can do in this world. Yes. And I noticed that this concept of spirituality, which, white girl here, found it in yoga, but it quickly snowballed. And so I'm curious, how you find the intersection, or if you find an intersection with spirituality and creativity.
100%. There was actually Andrew Huberman, who we previously chatted about. He has a really amazing episode. Yes. Actually, both him and Tim Ferriss have really amazing episodes interviewing Rick Rubin, and they are epic if you haven't listened to them yet. And he talks about this a lot in there too. So he has a book coming out that I have to read. It just sounds so amazing. Where he took 7 years to kind of document the process of when the thing was the thing, and what happened for that to happen. What were the ingredients that were going on around them?
Are you talking about The Creative Act, Rick Rubin's book? Did
you read it?
Okay, it's out. You can read it. Yeah.
I know. I need to read it.
It's good. It's super quick. It's a super,
you would read it in a day.
Yeah.
He said he wrote it to be like reading the Tao. He's I know it's not the Tao, but he wanted it to be very easily absorbed. And so one of the things that really hit home with me that he talks about is that we're always co-creating. So our creative process is a co-creation process with whatever you want to label it, right? It can be God, if that resonates with you. It can be nature or the universe or the energy around us that has been proven exists, right? We don't have to get into spiritual ideas in the way that they have been constructed through religion and other places in order to understand there is a greater frequency happening around us that we are tapping into all the time. And if you're someone who has made the space at any point in your life to have any of the kinds of practices that open up the space and intuition, then you know that your creativity blows up when you're doing that. Now, there's a billion reasons and ideas and theories as to what that could be. It depends on, which theory you want to latch onto on any given day. If we're in a simulation and it's just actually you and you're the one playing the game and you're connecting to some other part of you within the matrix, I don't know, or it's a greater consciousness. It doesn't really matter. But in that way, we're co-creating with something bigger. And to me, that is the creative spiritual process. It needs to resonate with you and what that feels like, or it doesn't. You just need to do the practices and feel it and experience it.
Okay. I think this might be my last question, but so do you think you just described your creative process, or do you have a way that you specifically shift into creative gear?
Oh, this is something I would love to actually engineer more. So I would say no and yes. I definitely tap into creativity more when I am more actively in my practices to keep me connected, open, clear, processing all of the muck and the stuff that's happening on top of it, because creativity can't grow through layers of shame.
Yeah.
So yes, that's part of the creative process. Now, I'm in the middle of writing a book right now. Well, I'm in the very first phases of it. And there's so much that needs to be done. And I have so many ideas. And I am definitely in this like, okay, I would love to engineer this a little bit more so I can be a little bit more focused in birthing this thing that feels so needed in the world. So do I have something that is, I think, reusable for everyone? No. But do I think that making sure that I am clear and open and processing the things that are coming through, whether that's things that actually happen, like yelling at my 3.5-year-old or watching a horrible video that hits on my soul on social media, whatever it is, that I'm processing through those things so those aren't living as layers on top of the creative process. That's super important. And when I'm doing that, the ideas drop in, or the motivation to go sit down at my computer and schedule time to interview women for my book, or post something that will gather more data, because that's the phase I'm in right now, will happen. That happens then and allows me to continue to move forward in the creative process.
Okay, I totally lied. I have one more question. Inspired by your answer. Yeah. So, and this is also inspired by your superpower. What would you say to somebody who is a creative, whose livelihood does depend on their art, and they find themselves in a death process where there is no muse showing up?
Yeah. Whew. I mean, that's such a hard place to be. One of my really core beliefs, because of my own experiences and what I've seen with other people, is that we cannot tap in truly to the creative process that is at a really deep level in our world today if we are in deep financial scarcity. Now, that is not true across the board for everyone, because not everyone is the same, right? So there are people out there who are inspired by their own death process and need it. Now, there's underlying beliefs to look at there.
That's such a good call. Yep.
You know, they need it. And I say that truly in quotations for those of you listening, because I don't actually believe that that's true. I don't think anybody has to experience that in order to be in a creative process. And we can manufacture chaos in order to sustain those beliefs. So I operate, for the most part, from my core belief that we are not at our highest and best self in our creative process or otherwise if we're in financial scarcity. So what do we need to do to make sure the ship is in the right place and heading in the right direction to support your death process to happen and step into the next version of yourself? I don't think we need to burn the ships down. I've experienced burning the ships down, and I've experienced not burning the ships down. And I can tell you 100% the latter was a way better experience. I had to do a lot of work to undo the belief systems that was the only way first.
Yeah, I mean, I found just allowing the process. I don't know about you, but a lot of the people I'm speaking with right now are feeling like they're in the middle of this kind of death space. And I don't know that my people necessarily have that verbiage around their experience, but it's like nothing they're doing is working. They're losing that kind of spark and that motivation and excitement. And it can feel like everything is coming to an end. Yeah. And rather than fight that or resist it or make it mean something like I fucked up, or I don't love my work anymore, or I need to burn this all down, what if it can just be? And I know like the last few years have been crazy for everybody, also coming from a place of obscene privilege. The kids these days, I think they call it rotting, but like November and December for me, it just was what it was. And I gave myself permission in every moment of every day to just rot. And like, I say that whilst also running a couple different businesses, doing my bare minimum is probably a fuckload of work. Like, but it felt like for me, I had never moved so slow. I had never slept so much. I had never worn so many sweatpants for so many days in a row. And I literally woke up kind of like 6, 7 weeks into that and was like, oh, we're back online. We can do this again. And maybe that comes with experience. Maybe that just comes again with like giving yourself permission to just meet yourself where you're at.
Accepting what is.
Pretty powerful. Yeah. And I mean, just, it's like death doula-ing people. It's a pretty powerful mission that you've taken on.
Yeah, and it's weird. I'm like a masochist. I love it. But I will say that I do think this new project, this book project I'm on, which is basically about the death and rebirth process in postpartum that no one tells you about. It's confirming what you just said and what my belief is over and over, which is the more we resist and stop accepting what is in the moment and keep holding on to something that was before, whether that was before you needed to have rest on a deeper level every day, or the person you were before, the longer we hold the suffering, the pain that you're going to go through in this death process is inevitable. That's unavoidable. Being in suffering for an extended amount of time, in my opinion, is where we don't have to go there, because we can allow that process to fully change us. Like, I would be willing to bet that over the next year, you're going to have so much connective tissue happening from that 7-week period that you didn't know was happening underneath the surface. And when we allow ourselves to actually go all the way into that and be in it with it during that time, like, metamorphosis is happening. It's just not happening at the cognitive level. And that's the magic, right? We have to let go of the seeing is believing and know that it's actually there. And it can feel sometimes like we're in this depression period, and we are. And yet, the more we allow ourselves to be in what is with each moment, it does suddenly lighten, like you experience. When we don't, that's when it starts to drag on and on and on, and we feel like we've totally lost ourselves because we didn't allow the process of decomposition to happen, the process of that part going away and decomposing and allowing the rest of it, yourself, to grow out of it.
That's why you love the death process. I think.
The beauty on the other side
the
is
decomposition
amazing.
point was like, do you think it takes? Okay, here's second after question of being like, this is my last question. Do you think that's the definition of faith? Is that belief that something that you have yet to see or experience exists?
Yeah, I do think that is faith. I think also, though, when you're going through that process, it can be really hard to hold it for yourself. And you need to have some line of someone, something, some circle, some anything that can hold that trust and that faith and that container for you in it.
Do you think this is why you don't worry? Because you've done this so many times that it's a practice for you, and you like, it's just a matter of, I never say it's even a matter of time because it takes as long as it takes. But it's funny. I call them like muggles. I was talking to a muggle about like leaning into the hard stuff and like making the really risky decisions. And like, this is where the growth happens. And I know on the other side of it is the amazing story and like the comeuppance and like, the hero returning to their home with all of this wisdom gained to be able to bestow on others. And the uncle was like, there are no guarantees in life. You don't know just because you made the hard call that you're going to get something out of it. And I was like, actually I do. And I wouldn't think about it like that. But like, there is that frequency of knowing, like you talked about like the big things in life. There is this, I sort of feel it and describe it like frequencies. I think that comes from my old audio engineering. Like I see a wavelength and then that I recognize that particular frequency. And it's that's my fuck yes. Right. But for all intents and purposes, it looks fucking insane as well. And it's probably like dangerous, reckless, selfish, like all of these things. But I've practiced that death enough to know the life that springs up on the other side is so fucking worth it. Even if I can't see it or experience it right now, it's like the calm in the storm. And I don't know what the sunshine and rainbows are going to look like because I'm just not quite there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. My brain wanted to go a million different directions with so many things you just said. And, you know, I actually really like frequency because I think it really, especially how you described it from the audio engineering side of it, I think it's unfortunately been co-opted by the new age world, which I have a lot of opinions about. But I think it's a really good way to describe it because it's just like when you feel the beat of something that like makes your body want to move, you know, it's the same thing in all of these things that we're talking about. And I think that there sometimes is some danger that when, again, people co-opt some of these ideas in turning it around to say that like to minimize really fucking difficult experiences and the pain and not actually witness someone's deep, difficult experience. Like we see that a lot, especially in pop psychology with this, like there's something better for you on the other side, just get through it. And not taking the time in the actual process, in the pain, to witness the pain. My teacher, David Bederick, who's amazing, he teaches process-oriented facilitation, and he has a model called unshaming, which I talk a lot about shame, so it makes sense. His theory is that trauma actually comes from abuse that was never witnessed or witnessed in a way that essentially becomes a critic, right? So like a child who's abused and goes to their mother and tells them, and the mother says, that didn't happen, or you're lying, that becomes an internalized trauma. Or when the mother saw it and says, that didn't happen, it becomes this deeply internalized trauma and self-critic. But if they go to the mother or the mother saw it and the mother defends them or says, that was really hard, I'm really sorry that happened, they're being witnessed in their pain and it's not becoming embodied in who they are. And we do that every day of our life now, right? So this is like such a hugely, hugely important part of this process is recognizing that yes, there is beautiful things that come out of the decomposition that comes from death. And in order for that to happen, we have to feel deeply witnessed so that we don't add layers of shame again.
I'm having like a full body reaction to that. Thank you for putting it so beautifully. That's incredibly powerful. And I think we could continue talking for 1,000 years and we will, yes, but maybe not while recording it on this podcast right now. So, Jaime, anything else to add? Where can people find you? Do you have any cool things coming up? I mean, I know the answer is yes, but anything specific to share before we depart?
Oh my goodness. Well, I always have things coming. There's a few things I'm working on right now. So, people can reach me by going to inspiredfocus.link, LINK. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've got my bad.
No. This one's going to be specific for people listening to your podcast so that I can make sure to update it.
Oh, cool.
You.
Okay.
So inspiredfocus.link, LINK, and / you know everything. And I'll make sure that anything that I'm doing right now is on that page. And right now, actively, which is going to happen for quite a while, I am in the process of interviewing mothers of their experience in postpartum and the death and rebirth process that they have. Good, bad, ugly, amazing. doesn't matter. So I will have a link on that page to be able to book a time with me to interview you if you'd like to share your story. Right now, it's really just gathering stories to find golden threads and see if my theories are true. Eventually, that will turn into a book, but we're not there yet. Otherwise, I will likely have retreats coming up. I'm also writing a manifesto. So there's a whole bunch of things going on. You can find the information all on that link. And otherwise, check out my podcast, which is Inspired Focus Podcast. And we'll make sure that that link is on the show notes and also in my link on my page.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I feel like your children were tortured while you were doing this.
They're
so
well
tell them
taken
thank
care
you
of.
from me as well. Oh no, I'm sure they are. That's demonstrative that they keep screaming. So that means like everything is good, right?
Yeah,
but thank
usually.
them for me, and thank your business partner and life partner and co-parenting partner for me as well. And I always look forward to the next time we talk. And I just think, the proof for me that I'm on the right path and I'm continuing to create something worthwhile is that I get to be in connection with people like you. And I am just so impressed and appreciative by everything that you've created and the way that you serve people and this world with all of your medicine. So Jaime, thank you so much. I have a couple moms I'm definitely going to send your way. I obviously work with people who are trying to navigate how the fuck you do this while also creating and stewarding another life in this world. It is a challenge I did not take on, and I am grateful every damn day that I did it. So
I get that. I love it so much. And I also get that. And I just want to echo the same sentiments. I'm so grateful. I feel the same way. And I'm deeply appreciative of being able to be on here. I'd love to come on again. And you need to come on mine so that we have we can
I would
send
love
each
that.
other each way. Yeah.